So today, an inquiry by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke into whether free, fair and safe elections can be held in light of the COVID-19 pandemic is set to begin taking oral submissions. But last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa placing the country on alert level 4 of the lockdown, effectively banning all gatherings except funerals. Now, civil society organizations, medical experts, as well as the IEC and political parties were expected to make their submissions. It's uncertain whether the Moseneke inquiry will be able to present its report by the 21st of July and whether the elections will indeed go ahead as planned. It's almost certain that by-elections planned for the end of June in the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape and KZN will be impacted as well. So could the October local government elections face the same fate, perhaps be postponed? Let's unpack the story for you now. Executive Chair of the Institute of Elections Management Services in Africa, Tselane, joins us for more. Terry, it's great to have you with us on the show. You know, before the President's address last night, one could have said, that we likely will see the local government elections go ahead in October. Now that we're under level 4 of the lockdown, there are bans on all kinds of gatherings. It's looking less likely.
Absolutely. Previously I had argued that the elections should not be postponed willy-nilly. And of course, that position still stands. But the current situation that we find ourselves in is such that there is no way that we can proceed with the elections and still regard those elections as being free and fair. I think actually for the past few weeks, it has increasingly become clear that the conditions do not exist in a country to hold free and fair elections. So the IC has got absolutely no other option but to ensure that the elections are postponed, probably to sometime early next year.
Terry, what does that mean? Because constitutionally we must have these local government elections in October. What would a postponement entail?
Well, the legislation does anticipate moments in history when the elections have got to be postponed. Section 21 of the Electoral Act does empower the Commission to approach a person who has called for an election to postpone the election. And also Section 8.1 of the Municipal Electoral Act empowers the Commission to do so. In other words, to approach a person who has set the date for the elections to postpone the date of those elections. The only aspect that is there as a qualification has always been that but this must still happen within 90 days after the date of the last elections. But as our experience has now demonstrated over the past few months, the elections have been postponed beyond the constitutionally stipulated period of 90 days. So what the IC has done, it has gone to the Constitutional Court to ask the Constitutional Court to allow the postponement of the elections beyond the constitutionally stipulated period. As you may be aware that the Constitutional Court is the guardian of the Constitution in a constitutional democracy. So the postponement is not impossible. Legislation anticipates moments when postponement would have to happen. The only thing that has got to be followed is obviously the process of having to approach the Constitutional Court in order to authorize that postponement.
In terms of what it means for who remains in power, I mean, these would effectively be parties, political parties who have exceeded their time in office.
Absolutely. I mean, look, like I'm saying, it would not be happening for the first time. All the by-elections that we have had this year are by-elections that basically took place outside the constitutionally stipulated period. So it is not something unthinkable. It is not something undoable to hold an elections and to leave those people who are in office for those few months. As long as the elections are not being postponed indefinitely. And my position is that they should not be postponed indefinitely. They should at least take place by May next year.
Yeah. And I mean, at the heart of this, and this is what organizations, political parties, sectors like the liquor industry, the restaurant industry, what's at the heart of everything that's unfolding now is our vaccination rollout plan. It's the one thing that's stopping us from getting our economy back on track, and the elections are just one more thing on the list there of things that are affected?
Absolutely. That's a very important point. And the point that we are making is that this period of postponement will allow, firstly, the electoral staff of the IEC, because remember that on the day of the elections like this, probably IEC will be having more than 2,000 poll workers working in the voting stations, interacting with people. And the electoral staff of the IEC itself. So this will give the health authorities an opportunity to vaccinate all those people who will be interacting with people, the electoral staff of the IEC, and those who will be working in the voting stations. That's the first category of people that they're going to have to focus on. So IEC would have to be regarded as an essential service, and its workers be prioritized. But the second thing is that remember that the people who are infected and who are getting sick and going to the hospitals are the voters. So that category of people must also be prioritized. In other words, we have seen that from the 1st of July, they've indicated that they're going to be focusing on those who are 50 and to 59. Other categories before that have already been attended to. So it would mean that there's going to be really a serious rollout program to cover now all those people from 50 to 18, because those are your voters. So that by the time at least the elections take place, those people are not in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the IEC for its part has said, it's going to put everything it needs to do in place in the event that it can go ahead with the local government elections. It's obviously looking at other countries that have conducted elections during a pandemic, Terry. What do you reckon it's learned from those countries?
Well, the experiences are different.
Yeah.
And the current wave that we're going through is also completely different. There's no election management body that has actually organized an election within the kind of the wave that we are currently experiencing. So there isn't much that they can learn from there. But, the Constitutional Court during the issue of clockwork indicated what free and fair elections entail. And they said free and fair election basically must be seen within a context. Now, what is the current context? The current context is that we are under serious lockdown. Gatherings have been prohibited. People are in hospitals. There is just an atmosphere of fear in our community. So, I mean, how many people are going to be going to the voting stations to go and cast the vote, even if you're saying to people they must go and cast the vote? So it is going to be extremely difficult. And that context that the Constitutional Court referred to, it is the context that now the IEC must understand that a moment has arrived in our history when you cannot actually proceed with the elections. And even the Constitutional Court, as I've argued, has indicated that certain circumstances may prevail that require postponement to happen.
Yeah, it certainly seems more and more likely. Terry Tselane, thanks very much for your time this morning. He is Executive Chair of the Institute of Elections Management Services in Africa. Those public hearings into whether the local government elections can indeed get underway, whether they can be free and fair, they get underway today for oral submissions. That inquiry is led by former Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke.